Okay, for this project we're going to use Adobe Photoshop to take a picture and create a magazine cover. You should have received a handout with all the details of the assignment, and you just need to make sure you follow that handout so that you have all the required materials on your magazine cover. So before we get started, let me go ahead and show you an example of what a finished product would kind of look like. This is a magazine cover, a fake magazine cover of a People magazine from the 2010 Pay It Forward Day. And you see here we have a picture, and then we have a title, we have the web address, we have the date, we have a main headline, we have some secondary headlines, we have another story down here, another story here, we have a barcode and a mailing address. About the only thing that's missing from this cover that you need to include is a price. You need to go ahead and make a price for your magazine. So we're going to go ahead and go through the process of how you create this magazine just using Photoshop and some basic tools on Photoshop. So let me go ahead and minimize this, and I'm going to bring up the original picture, which is right here. So you can see here's our original picture that we used to create the magazine cover. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and crop this picture to the magazine size. Now, a normal magazine you see on a newsstand has a portrait landscape. Okay, it's taller than it is wider, so we need to go ahead and create our picture that same way. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my crop tool, and up here in the tool options bar, I'm going to go ahead and create some settings. I'm going to make it 8 inches wide, and I'm going to make it 10.5 inches tall. And that'll give us a magazine size cover. Now I'm just going to go down here and I'm just going to kind of create a selection with my crop tool. And there's a couple things you want to keep in mind as you do this. First of all, when I create my selection, I'm going to go ahead and move this over here so that in this case the people in my magazine cover are on the right hand side. Why? Well, that gives me a nice natural area over here to the left to go ahead and put some font. If you go ahead and I'll bring up my example again. Let me just go ahead and escape out of the crop tool. Bring up my example again. You see they're over here on the right, and now I have a place to type on the left. Depending on your picture, you might want the people on the left, you might want the people on the right. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes you actually have to have them in the middle and you just kind of need to type through their body, but you want to create areas where you can type. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create this area up here at the top, so I have an area where I can go ahead and put the title of my magazine. So once I've created that selection, I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter and crop it down. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my magnifying glass and make it actual pixels. And now I have my magazine cover, at least the start of my magazine cover, right here for me to work on. Now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to grab the type tool, and we're going to put some simple type on there. So let me grab the type tool. Now you can use any font that you would like. I love the Impact font for this project, and that's what I will use. The reason I like the Impact font, and let me just go ahead and type out here People Magazine across the top, is the Impact font is a nice thick font. I'm going to go ahead and make it nice and large here. And what that does is it allows you to do a couple things. Number one, you can apply like gradients and things like that to it. But secondly, it makes the outline show up very well. If you have a real thin font, sometimes the outline doesn't show up very well because the font's so thin it just looks awkward. But I'm going to go ahead and position my title right up there at the top. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to put a gradient overlay on it. So with my People Magazine layer highlighted, I can just come down here to Layer Styles, and I'll go to Gradient Overlay. And you can see it defaults to this gray and black. You can kind of see that up there. But if I double click on it, I have all these different choices, and I'm going to choose this orange, yellow, and orange, except I'm going to make some changes to it. I'm actually going to go ahead out here at the very end. I'm going to make my very end yellow, and I'm going to make my middle kind of my orange, and over here on the left I'm going to make it a reddish color. That looks like a good red right there. And then instead of it being my angle at 90 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and mess with my angle so my color kind of goes from right over to left. Now let me go ahead and add a stroke. And for my stroke, I'll double click on that to get my options. I'm going to make it a black outline. and then I can go ahead and add a drop shadow, and there we go. Now my magazine, my title is maybe a little bit too big. I think I'm at 92 fonts. Let me go ahead and make this 90 just to resize it a little bit, and then move this around, and now we're off to a start. Now I'll just go ahead and grab my type tool again, and I'm going to create another layer, and in this layer I'm going to put the date, and you can see as I click on here I get another layer, and this time I'm going to put the date. I don't want it at 90 font, I want it kind of small. I'm going to take it all the way down to 24, and the date of the Pay It Forward Challenge was April 23rd, so I'll go ahead and type April 23rd, 2010, and I'll just kind of move it to where I want it. And once again, I'm going to go down to the layer styles, and I'm going to add stroke, and this time I'm going to add a black stroke, but I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. Remember, you can use this slider to make your stroke around it whatever size you want. I'm just going to make it 1, and there we go. And now I'm going to grab my type tool, and another thing that you have to add is the website you can find your magazine. Now one thing you kind of get in the habit of doing, or at least I do, is I just kind of go ahead and click right out here in the middle of the magazine cover to type whatever I'm going to type, and then I'll move it to my area. So I went ahead and typed www.peoplemagazine.com, and now I'm going to put it right up here. And you can see obviously it's too big, but I can just double click to highlight my font, and I can change it. Let's go down to about 14 and see if that fits. I can use my arrow keys on my keyboard as well to move it over. Yep, that fits perfectly. And in this case, with that text layer highlighted, I'm going to go down. I'm just going to add a drop shadow to that to help it stand out a little bit. And now we're on our way. So there's my People magazine and my date up at the top, and if I go ahead and bring up my example for a second, you kind of see what I have going on there. Now I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to grab my font tool, and over here I'm going to go ahead and type my main story, and in this case I think I typed behind the scenes, and if I hold down Shift and Enter, it will take me down one line, behind the scenes at the Pay It Forward Challenge. And kind of what you do is you just type it out there, and you just kind of have to play with the size and see what size you want it to be. Okay, so here you see I have it at 60. Now you see all this space between the lines. If you remember right, what I need to do is I need to go ahead and select that text, and over here all the way to the right I have the character and paragraphs palette, and I'll go ahead and bring that down, and this first choice on the right hand column is your spacing between lines. You see it's set to auto, but I can pull it down and change it. So let me go ahead and make that 60 as well. You can see it kind of brings my words together a little bit. I'm just go ahead and move it right there. And now in this case I'm just going to go ahead and I set it as yellow. So let me go ahead and choose a color. And I'm just kind of going through this kind of quickly for the purpose of the speed of this video. And I used a reddish outline, so I went to stroke, and I went ahead and just used it as red. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bit smaller and say OK. So now I have behind the scenes at the Pay It Forward Challenge. I can just go ahead and get that wherever I want. Now I can just come down and I can just click down below it, and I'm going to go ahead and make this smaller. And I'm going to go ahead and go ahead and type some more information. So let me go ahead and type this information in here. And remember, Shift Enter will take you down one line. Now you'll notice that there's a big difference between my lines here, and that's because I still have my paragraph palette set to 60 up there like we had earlier. And I'm having some problems typing here what they ate for lunch. Next year's big plan. Okay, so once I get all that typed, I can just go ahead and highlight all of it, and I'll just come back up here, and when I have my spacing set at 60, I'll go ahead and change that. I use 24 font, so I'll change my setting to 24, and now you can see it looks a little bit better. And I have some stuff I need to fix there. It looks like I have space here. Go ahead and fix that. And there we go. So let me go ahead and wrap up part 1, and we'll work on part 2 here in a moment. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go through part 2 of the magazine project. You see here we started with the picture, now we have a title, a date, the web address, we got the main story and some side stories that are inside of that. So let me go ahead and bring up our example, and we'll see what we need to finish. We need to, you see here we have a picture, a secondary picture, and we have a story that goes along with that picture. So let's go ahead and do that first. And what I have down here is I have a picture of Mr. Paisley from the Pay It Forward Challenge Day. So let me go ahead and bring up the picture. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to grab my move tool and drag and drop this picture onto my magazine cover. Now you see that it's obviously too large, but what I can do is I can just go up to Edit and Free Transform. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this picture to where I can get to the edges of the picture. If I hold down my Shift key, it'll allow me to go ahead and resize the picture and maintain the height and width ratio. And I'm just going to go ahead and do that and get it to where I need it to be. And so let me go ahead and get it to the size I need it to be. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it there. And I'll hit enter to go ahead and set that. Now if I look at the image, you notice right here along the edges it doesn't look very good. You see how the pictures kind of blend together. So what I can do is I can just highlight the layer, and I can come down here to my layer styles menu and choose stroke, and I'll go ahead and put a stroke around the outside. Remember, you can adjust the size or the color, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave that at 3. And there we go. We have a picture that's kind of offset from the rest of the picture. If I want, I can add a little bit of drop shadow. You don't have to, but sometimes that can help. Let me go ahead and say OK there. Now I'll just grab my text tool, and I'll just come down here, and I can just go ahead and add my text. And I believe this story was how this teacher overcame his childhood fears. So I'll go ahead and type that in there. Let me fix that. Okay. And now I can grab the move tool and put it wherever I want. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this yellow, and I want to use the same yellow that I used up here. Probably the easiest way, at least what I've found is one of the easiest ways, is just to grab this eyedropper tool, and I can just click in this yellow. Okay, so now that yellow goes right there. I can just go ahead and double click on it. I can come up here and I can copy my color code. So let me go ahead and copy that. Now I can bring up my text of how this teacher overcame his childhood fears, go up here to the color, just paste down into my color code, and say OK. And now we have the same exact color. I'm going to go ahead and add a stroke to this, and I'm going to leave it as that red stroke. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, throw in some drop shadow, and there we go. Probably the only other thing I'm going to do is these lines just look a little bit too close to me. A lot of that's just visual. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjust it up here in my character palette. Just go ahead and set the leading to a little bit of a higher number. And there we go. How this teacher overcame his childhood fears. Now, if I look at my magazine example, you see down below I have this little area down here where I have this red box, and then I have another story about how to grill a great hamburger. This is very simple to do. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my toolbox, and first of all I'm going to change my color to red because I wanted a red box down there. And then I'm just going to grab my rectangular marquee tool right here. Actually, I'm sorry, my rectangular tool. My marquee tool is up here. This is my rectangle tool. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to draw out a rectangle down here at the bottom of the screen. And you notice there it is in red. Now I can just grab my type tool, and like I said, I like to come out into empty spaces to type my information. And I'll just type grilling with Wallach, the keys to a great hamburger. And Mr. Wallach was one of our chefs on Pay It Forward Day. Now obviously I'm not going to want red font because I have red down here, so let me go ahead and highlight that, and I can make it black, and then just grab my move tool and I'll move it down onto my little area. Now you notice we have this little, probably a little too much red, a little extra red up there. I can just highlight shape 1 and I can just go to edit and free transform, and I'll just go ahead and readjust the size and hit enter, and there we go. Okay. Now I have one final thing that I want to do. If I bring up my example, I want to go ahead and create this box right here with a barcode and a mailing address. And once again, that's really easy. I'm just going to go ahead and change my foreground color to white, and I'm going to grab my rectangle tool again, and I'm just going to come out here and draw my rectangle. Now if you go out to the internet and you go out to Google and you go to Google Images and you just search for barcode, you will get tons of barcodes that you can choose from, and you just go ahead and save one and open it up in Photoshop, and that's what I've done right here. Now I can just grab my move tool and drag it onto this picture. Obviously it's too big, but that's no problem. I can go up to edit and free transform. Once again, I'm going to hold down the shift key to maintain the height and width aspect ratio, and I'll just kind of resize it and get it to the size that I need it to be. And once I get it there, I'll hit enter, and now I can just arrow it down exactly where I want it to be on my little white rectangular box there. Now I'm just going to grab my type tool and I'm just going to come out here and I'm going to make my font a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to type in my name. Now in this case you'll type in your name. This is how I will know it's yours. Let me go ahead and change my font to black here, or my color to black, excuse me. Mr. Michael Horger. If I hold down shift and enter, it'll take me down one line. I am going to use the school's address, and I want you guys to use either the school's address or a made up address. I don't want you using your own. Zorville, Ohio 44656. My leading's still a little bit too much, so I'll go ahead and highlight it. I'll go up here. I used 14 fonts, so I'm going to want something close to 14 leading. I'm going to go ahead and make it 18, and then I can just arrow it to where I want it. And actually, as I look at it, I think 18 might be a little too much. Let's highlight it, make it 16, and arrow it down. Now I have some room up here, some dead room up here at the top of this box, so I'll just find that shape, which is shape number 2. I'll go up to edit and free transform, and I can just resize my shape to where I get it exactly what I want it. We'll go ahead to help it blend into the picture a little bit. I'm just going to add a layer style. I'm going to add a drop shadow, and voila. Actually, it blends a little bit into this red here, so actually I'm just going to grab my move tool and move that up a little bit. Actually, that's perfect. It's my barcode. Go ahead and find my barcode that needs to come up a little bit. And because my barcode came up a little bit, I'm going to want to grab my layer with my name, move it up a little bit, and voila, we got something. So if we look at the example we were trying to create, there it is. And basically in about 18 minutes we've gone ahead and completed it. So what you need to do is, you guys for this assignment need to get a picture and create a magazine cover. Please refer to the handout that I gave you that will give you all the information on how you will be graded.